In 1986, the camera captures a quiet suburban street in New Jersey, its serene calm interrupted by the emergence of a massive figure from a modest home. The towering man, standing 6'5" and weighing 300 pounds, casts a long, ominous shadow. This is Richard Kuklinski, a devoted father of 3, a Little League coach, and yet one of the most prolific contract killers in American history. Known as the Iceman, Kuklinski had lived a double life for nearly 3 decades, balancing suburban family life with a brutal career that involved shooting, stabbing, strangling, poisoning, and freezing his victims. He is linked by the FBI to more than 100 deaths, though Kuklinski himself boasted of over 250 kills. But what led a child, born in the slums of Jersey City, to become such a remorseless killer? The answer lies in his childhood, where he learned lessons of power, pain, and survival the hard way. Chapter 1. A Childhood of Brutality, Expanded. Richard Kuklinski's early life was a living nightmare. The Kuklinski household, at 113 Boyd Avenue in Jersey City, was a pressure cooker of violence and constant psychological torment. His father, Stanley, a Polish immigrant, was the primary source of abuse. Stanley didn't just beat his children. He systematically tortured them, subjecting Richard to extreme punishments. Former FBI profiler Robert Ressler later described the punishments. Stanley would force Richard to stand motionless for hours as punishment. If the boy so much as twitched, he'd be beaten with a belt buckle. The physical abuse was horrific, but what really scared Richard was the psychological warfare. Stanley's cruelty went beyond mere physical punishment. Neighbors reported seeing Stanley bring prostitutes home and forcing Richard and his siblings to watch. These degrading acts were used as tools of control and humiliation, further deepening the trauma. But it wasn't just Stanley who inflicted pain on young Richard. His mother, Anna, a devout Catholic, used religion as a weapon of torment. Kuklinski later recalled, "She'd lock me in a closet for hours while she prayed the rosary. I could hear her through the door, 'Hail Mary, full of grace,' while I sat in my own filth." This form of emotional neglect left deep scars on Richard's psyche. Adding to this toxic environment was the death of Richard's older brother, Florian, who was brutally beaten by Stanley. Florian's death was covered up as a traffic accident, but Richard knew the truth. At just 8 years old, he was forced to view his brother's lifeless body at the funeral home. It was a brutal introduction to the harsh reality that the world could be easily deceived, that the system could be manipulated. Richard would later say, "That's when I learned the system could be fooled. If you're smart enough, you can get away with death." Chapter 2. The Making of a Killer, Expanded. By the time Richard was 14, he had already transformed into a cold and calculating individual. His first kill was not out of anger, but out of a calculated need to survive and exact revenge. After months of watching a local bully, Richard ambushed him one day as the boy walked home alone. He struck the boy with a lead pipe wrapped in cloth to avoid leaving fingerprints. The act was meticulously planned, showcasing Richard's ability to think and strategize like an adult. When questioned by the police, Richard mimicked the innocent persona his mother had perfected, and the death was ruled an accident. It was a victory for Richard, and reinforced his belief in his own power, a belief that would fuel his future actions. But Richard's true descent into the underworld began with an unlikely apprenticeship. Instead of joining the Mafia directly, Richard learned the art of killing from a local Mr. Softy ice cream truck driver. The driver, a self-proclaimed chemistry buff, introduced Richard to the deadly power of cyanide. Kuklinski later confessed, "He taught me how cyanide works, how just a few drops in someone's drink could mimic a heart attack." This early introduction to poison would later become one of Richard's signature methods of killing. When Roy DeMeo, a key figure in the Gambino crime family, decided to test Richard's capabilities, he didn't just ask for a simple hit. Instead, he wanted a demonstration of creativity. Kuklinski responded by luring a small-time gambler into his trap with promises of easy money, only to dissolve the man's body in acid. The guy disappeared like he never existed. Gambino reportedly said, "This Polak's got imagination." This marked the beginning of Kuklinski's successful career as a hitman for organized crime, where he would be responsible for many more deaths in the years to come. Chapter 3. The Iceman's Toolkit expanded. Richard Kuklinski's methods were as creative as they were gruesome. He became known for his chilling techniques, each one more horrifying than the last. The freezer technique. After shooting Louis Mesquet in 1981, Kuklinski stored the body in an industrial freezer for 2 years before dumping it. The frozen tissue confused pathologists when the body was discovered, making it nearly impossible to pinpoint the time of death. Cyanide innovations. Kuklinski didn't just poison his victims by spiking their food. He also developed a unique spray bottle method, misting his victims with liquid cyanide to ensure quick absorption into their bodies. Psychological torture. Perhaps the most disturbing of all Kuklinski's methods was his desire to keep his victims conscious during their deaths. "I wanted them to know," he once told psychiatrist Dr. Helen Morrison, "to feel that moment when they realized who was in control." Despite the brutality of his actions, Richard Kuklinski was able to maintain a facade of suburban normalcy. He lived in Dumont, New Jersey, with his wife and children, where he was the picture of domesticity. Neighbors remembered him as polite and helpful, even assisting with a local paper route. This Jekyll and Hyde existence was made possible by what forensic psychologist Dr. Michael Stone described as compartmentalization taken to pathological extremes. Richard separated his violent alter ego from his family life, effectively becoming two different people, one a loving father and husband, the other a cold-blooded killer. Chapter 4. The Downfall expanded. Richard's downfall came not through brute force, but through the brilliant work of undercover FBI agent Dominic Polifrone. Posing as a mobster named Dominic Provenzano, Polifrone spent 18 months gaining Kuklinski's trust. Their conversations, often held in a quiet mall food court, became increasingly revealing. On one occasion, Kuklinski casually stated, "See, most guys get emotional. That's why they get caught. For me, it's like taking out the trash." When Polifrone asked if he ever felt remorse for his kills, Kuklinski's chilling response was, I feel hungry. Let's get a burger." The final arrest on December 17, 1986, almost failed when Kuklinski reached for a pistol concealed under his car seat. He fought with such ferocity that it took 5 officers to subdue him. Yet even in custody, Richard remained eerily calm, asking only about Christmas presents for his daughters. It was a stark reminder of the depths of his detachment from reality. Chapter 5. Legacy and Lingering Questions. Kuklinski's death in Trenton State Prison in 2006 remains a subject of debate. Officially, his death was ruled as the result of natural causes, but many believe that his former associates in the Gambino crime family couldn't risk him ever testifying. Retired Detective Pat Kane suggested the Gambinos couldn't risk him testifying. That cell was too convenient. Though Kuklinski was convicted of multiple killings, the full extent of his crimes may never be fully known. At least 18 bodies are still missing, and there are likely many more victims that will never be identified. Modern forensic psychiatry has reassessed Kuklinski's case, with Dr. Catherine Ramsland noting, "He displayed traits of both antisocial personality disorder and attachment disorder. The perfect storm for a contract killer." Despite the evil he committed, Richard's daughter, Merrick, offers a haunting glimpse into his duality. She recalls that her father, while incarcerated, would send her poems, a side of him that seemed almost tender. The same hands that strangled men could write such beautiful words. The Iceman's Shadow. Today, as we walk through the abandoned Jersey City projects where Kuklinski grew up, the wind howls through broken windows like a child's cry. Old social worker files from 1948 remain buried in dusty archives, their warnings about the Kuklinski boy long ignored. Richard's case remains a focal point for psychologists and criminologists studying the making of violent offenders. His story continues to spark debate. Are killers like Richard Kuklinski born with an innate evil, or are they shaped by the darkness of their environments? In a chilling 1993 interview, Kuklinski himself offered a final, haunting insight into his life. "You want to know my secret? There is no secret. The world makes monsters every day. Most just never get caught." The screen fades to black, with the final title card appearing. Richard Kuklinski, 1935 to 2006. The Iceman's victims are still being identified.